Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is February 1st, 2018. And this is episode 557. I'm your host, James Jones. With me today is Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
My favorite time of the year. Predictions.
Fuck
They're
off.
coming.
All right, that's going to do it for Radio Free Nintendo this week. John, predict me something better than a prediction segment.
I predict that this is going to be the best episode of RFN ever.
We're fucked.
We're
Greg.
usually wrong, though.
That's But he knows we're usually wrong, so does that mean that he's like double negated his prediction?
I guess we'll just have to find out at the end of the show.
I don't think we have to wait to find out. I mean, granted, the bar is already staggeringly low, so maybe we'll just kind of fumble over it. Greg, how are you today?
I'm still here.
Still
Sounds very
Nice.
positive.
Our RFN new slogan is just some mumbling and, I don't know, still here?
It is a common question, but I'm not good at answering it because
Fair enough.
It's just I can't.
Look at me, I'm not dead.
Yeah, pretty
Huh?
much. I mean that's what I've got. Yeah,
Yep.
but the
The only thing
predictions.
keeping it out
Yeah,
of the-
to be fair, we dodged them last year because of Switchmas. It's just the terrible chickens coming home to roost.
Can I just
basically.
predict there won't be another Switch miss and then we get to walk away scot-free? For fucking real. We do this every year, and every year we go like, oh, this is going to be a disaster. And then it's a disaster, and then we're like, yeah, that was a disaster. And then we get an email like, it's January 2nd, and people are like, don't think we have forgotten that you haven't done predictions yet. And I'm like, dude, it's January 2nd. Calm yourself.
Sometimes we get it right, though, and sometimes we get it tragically wrong. But
I mean, it's not a tragedy.
I
it's more
think
just-
it is.
Predictably wrong.
Samus Returns would have been much better with Sparkles.
I mean, that is one person's opinion, yes. So this week we're gonna actually try to cruise through some new business pretty quick. We're a little bit light, but we have at least one or two games I want us to talk about. So we'll go ahead and we'll take care of that. And then, as we have mentioned, bemoaned, suffered, the predictions are out. Prediction season has begun. We are now in a world where things are being predicted. And thus we shall predict. John has his divining rod, and we will get started. But first, I want to give one piece of news. I'm backpedaling immediately. We are going to have to move the first retroactive collection for Wii Virtual Console, WiiWare, whatever, because John can't make it next week. So we're actually going to do it in episode 559 instead of 558. So we're moving it 1 week. But do play those games. We're going to try to continue with the same schedule, though, so we'll do one new WiiWare game in 560. So we're going to be hitting these pretty quick. But we're picking
And
games
those games are Bonsai Barber and You,
Yes.
Me, and the Cubes.
559, Bonsai Barber, You, Me, and the Cubes. Next week, we'll announce what the one for 560 is. But we don't know what it is yet, so we can't. It's not a tease. I just don't know. I'm sorry. In fact, I so don't know. I forgot to even name the games I do know. So here we are. But moving it for John because he's important to us, and I don't want anyone to miss out on Bonsai Barber. You are going to cut that bonsai, John. You are going to like it.
I'm
All
gonna
right.
prune it. Prune it, James. Prune it.
Mm-hmm. It's time for new business. Greg,
Yes.
you have a new game for us to talk about.
Yeah, it's a little bit more current than some of the things I end up playing. But yeah, so after the very warm reception that Celeste got last week with the reviews, Neil's review and others, I thought, and given the kind of game that it is, I thought I'd take the plunge and go straight in on it. So I've been playing it for much of the past week, and thoroughly enjoyed it is the bottom line on it. So in terms of the style of game, I guess the most sort of frequent comparisons I've heard is kind of to other like really kind of difficult platformers that I haven't actually played a lot of the examples that are given. Like, I still haven't got around to Super Meat Boy, believe it or not, even though it's on damn near everything these days, included Switch. But I want to be the guy or stuff like that. Like, I've not played these sorts of games.
There's also a demo for Slime Sand, which is kind of also
Yeah.
the same kind of, wall
Related.
clingy and, spikes
Yes.
everywhere kind of gameplay.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, like I said, I haven't played a lot of the kind of points of comparison for this, but it's not that those sorts of games don't appeal to me, because they do. It's just, kind of a question of timing and whatever, and kind of picking the right one or whatever. But given everything that was said about Celeste in terms of the game design and the aesthetics and all that kind of thing, I thought, yeah, this sounds like a good fit, so let's go for it. But in terms of the things it reminds me of from my experience, I mean, there's definitely, I couldn't help but think of Spectre Knight a bit, because of the wall clinging and the sort of, that air dashing that's so important to it. But in the end, the way the kind of the design changes over, like, the way that the levels are split, there's a number of chapters climbing the mountain, which is the goal of the game. But each sort of world, as it were, because they're quite big chapters, and obviously you don't really have like discrete levels within them, but it's very generous in terms of restarting when you die. I mean, it's not quite literally screen by screen, because there are some areas that are a few screens long. There will be some scrolling, but it's almost that generous. It's got, in fact, there is literally a sort of retro game embedded within it that you can find, where it's kind of like the 8-bit version, where like you don't use the shoulder buttons and stuff, and it is screen by screen, and so but even the actual full game is not that far away from that, because it actually gives you the chance, if you die, you regenerate very quickly, sort of at the beginning of that little sort of micro challenge. So each chapter is really kind of, in many ways, a succession of sort of tight little challenges. But what it reminded me of in terms of the way that different mechanics are introduced in each chapter, and it's not really so much a kind of Metroid type of situation in terms of your character gets progressively more powerful or anything. It's more that just different things are introduced and the gameplay style kind of changes accordingly. Was a bit like Stealth Inc. 2, a game of clones. To me, that had a similar kind of thing. So obviously that's much more puzzle driven, but it's a lot of dying or failing, over and over and over again, restarting quickly, and like I said, it has a similar sort of concept in terms of, with that you get different abilities in each in different sections that really kind of change the feel of the gameplay a lot. In this case, it's not so much about your abilities as it is about the environment, or certain sort of stage gimmicks, I guess you could call them. Things like bubbles that launch you, or feathers that can float you around, or things like that. That really make the experience quite different from section to section, even though the core aspects, which are the wall clinging, the wall jumping, the air dashing and all that, remain kind of constant throughout. But there is not, I guess, one of those kind of surprises, even having read reviews and all that, there was a kind of a strong puzzle component to this experience for me. And this is more so if you're trying to get a lot of the optional strawberries. So you have these strawberries that are strewn about the mountain. Some of them you will have to kind of poke around sort of off the beaten track to find. Others are in plain sight, but it kind of bifurcates like that screen or section of the level. So it's like, okay, well, it might be fairly straightforward to just get off this section. But if you want to do it getting the strawberry, it's there in plain sight, but it's very evident it's going to be way harder to do it. And in some cases, you're looking at it thinking, how am I actually going to pull that off even? You know, like, but it turns out it'll be sort of like, oh, well, there's a little ledge there that you cling to and you do a wall jump there, and then you could, like, bounce off a spring, and that gives you your air dash back, and then chain these together, and then, so even, a lot of the time it might be fairly transparent what to do, but it's just difficult to execute. But in some cases, there's some, pretty devilish things that they're sort of putting into the level design, to get these strawberries in particular, and that kind of was an unexpected pleasure in terms of the sort of that element of really kind of figuring out how I wanted to attack some of these. And that's the thing of it; they are optional, and I certainly didn't find all of them in my playthrough. I've seen the credits now. I've done some of the extra stuff too, but kind of. I really wanted to get as many of them as I could. Like I said, some you're not even going to know you missed them because they're tucked away in some secret corner of the level that you would have to, really kind of do well to find in the first place, and then it'll probably be a tricky challenge to actually collect it. And they have a kind of cute little mechanic with it in terms of once you touch it, you've kind of haven't quite collected it yet. Yeah, it won't actually cash in until you've kind of got back to safety. Because as I say, in general, it's very forgiving in terms of, yes, it's going to kill you a lot, but you're going to restart, very, very close to where you died probably, and so there's no real penalty. But of course, with these strawberries, if you die before it's cashed in, then you never collected it. So you've got that kind of little bit of anxiety sometimes of, like, especially if it's something you were trying to do quite a few times, you finally get it, and then it's like, okay, now I've just got to sort of stick the landing and it'll cash in. And, so it isn't as forgiving as just like, well, as soon as you touch it once, that's it. It's very much designed on, okay, you've done this crazy thing to get there, now you've got to get back safely. So I kind of like the way they handle that without it interfering with the generally very swift process of dying and reconvening the action. And the levels themselves are, I guess probably would be a lot more straightforward if you're not particularly fussed about collecting the strawberries, but still tricky. Because, like I said, in that event, you were still looking at the fact that it might be obvious, how you're going to kind of surmount these obstacles, but very often the actual execution is tough, even on the kind of the regular versions of these levels. But then there's the B-side versions, which are sort of, first of all, you've got to find a cassette tape. With somewhere in the level, which is always almost always in a hidden area, because somewhere that's off the kind of core path through the level, and then that will give you the opportunity to kind of do a remix of that chapter that is substantially harder and doesn't feature any collectible strawberries or anything. There's lots of secrets. It's just pure gauntlet, and I've done about half of those, the B-sides, and they are extremely difficult. So, very much, another level of difficulty on top of where it was originally, and where it was originally is pretty high. It's still, very satisfying to overcome these things, but definitely that's where the frustration satisfaction kind of balance was getting a little bit more problematic at times, and I haven't even done the harder ones yet. So, but it is certainly extra in a way. I don't think if it was a bit on the extreme side for someone, I think there's still plenty of other enjoyable content to the game that they'd be able to go through without quite so much pain and anguish, as the phrase went last week in last week's listener mail. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's been an extremely enjoyable experience. It's challenging, but clever, and the mechanics are generally very tight. The only thing that really I had trouble with at all, I would say, is that playing it in handheld mode, especially the way that when I'm trying to do something challenging, I start to grip harder and harder and harder. I can't help myself. I don't want to do it. I just do, and that tends to mean that the sort of separate buttons of that make up the D-pad grind against your thumb more because of the hard edges. So that was a bit of discomfort. But then when playing on TV mode with the Pro Controller, the D-pad is much more comfortable, but it's not all that precise. Although Justin Bruby has written for us about some of the kind of imprecision about the original Switch Pro Controller D-pad. Apparently, the most recent model that had the Xenoblade 2 sort of the pink handles and all, and the little graphics and stuff like that.
The hideous one, yes.
Yeah,
Saved by the Bell edition.
Not that gorgeous, but apparently the D-pad is improved on that one. Presumably, subsequent versions will also be. But yeah, I mean, look,
I thought that was just like one person who said that, and then it was not quite proved.
Yes, I'm not sure about the veracity of those things, but hopefully. If that was not so much the case, it will be addressed in some fashion in the future. We're all hoping for a D-pad Joy-Con, for instance, so, it'd be fine in portable mode. I mean, it's not a huge problem or anything. Like, the vast majority of kind of the problems I have are just user input error. There's no doubt, because you're switching directions for air dashes very quickly. It's going to happen. But just I played enough in the two different modes to kind of know to see the difference in how often I was getting certain kinds of things wrong. So hardly scientific, but it was enough to suggest to me that there is a bit of sloppiness in that D-pad. On the Pro Controller in terms of it's kind of a trade-off really, because it's more comfortable as you're sliding your thumbs between across the directions, but it's also more likely to kind of get caught, particularly like kind of doing a diagonal direction when I wanted a cardinal one. So that was a minor kind of thing, but I certainly don't fault the game for it, and there's still, even at this point, I've put plenty of time into it. I've done a lot of things, but there's still many more things to go. It's been really, really kind of rewarding to this point. It'll be interesting to see how far I can kind of go with some of this really challenging stuff before I either kind of say I'm past the point of it being fun anymore, or past the point of risking shattering my Switch in half because of how hard I'm holding the damn thing. But I mean, the other thing I do have to say before I wrap up is the music is excellent. They're very, very good. I think it's a good compliment for this kind of game because it's generally very melancholy music, fitting with the sort of themes of the game. But I'm the kind of person that finds melancholy music very relaxing, which is a good antidote to the very stressful nature of a lot of the action. Kind of just balances you out and keeps you in the right state of mind for just keep going and keep trying, even when sometimes the number of deaths gets comical. Really, before you actually succeed. But it's not like one thing where it's very different from something like Stealth Inc. 2 is you don't get the sort of the Portal style like snarky character like taking the piss. It's all like, oh, you can do it, yeah, So it's if for any reason you've ever found that trend irritating in games where they mock you for your failures, then this is safe. You'll fail a great many times, but you'll never be chided for it.
Oh, that's positive then.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of on the spot where like I want to play this game, but I'm worried that I'm not the best precision platform player, and that I will snap the Switch in half, or just push fingers all the way through it, and then it'll just shatter in my fingers, which would be bad, and make it difficult to play games in the future. But everything I hear is glowing. I'm gonna have to do it anyway and run that risk.
I said, I mean, there's so much about the game where the challenge is optional. in terms of the strawberries and the B-sides and all this stuff. But also there's that, I haven't touched it, but there's this whole like customizable sort of help mode, isn't there? Where it's like where you could slow the speed of the game down, or you could
infinite air dashes.
Yeah, do all these sorts of things, which so I mean, I would have thought just trying to sort of play through the core path of the game would be tricky, but not too crazy for people who've got experience of this sort of thing. So I would have thought that would be enjoyable at the very least. But even taking that might not be true. There are other countermeasures that can be deployed.
Fair enough. It's good though. I'm glad we have these kinds of unique. I mean, not unique. Probably what I want to talk about. New experiences coming to Switch.
It's also nice to have a game with sort of contemporary, sort of more realistic characters that more represent people like me. Which is to say, someone that doesn't use a smartphone. I feel like we're underrepresented in modern media.
I'm at a loss at this point, so we're just going to truck right on to the next person, who I haven't told you guys who it is. So, surprise, John Lindemann, talk about Monster Hunter World.
All right, yeah, so James and I regaled our tales of our buddy cop movie in Monster Hunter World a couple of weeks ago. So I got the retail version on PS4.
Matt Walker's Monster Hunter World, please.
Yes. Who are we really kidding? This game is Matt Walker through and through.
Yeah, Matt Walker designed, coded, drawn, voice acted, all of it.
Yeah, one might say this is a Matt Walker joint.
It is the product of one man.
I like Matt Walker World. That's pretty great.
I just like that.
Sort of like a theme park.
That's so obviously not true.
It's not true at all.
I know there's like a 95% chance he's hearing this and becoming incredibly uncomfortable.
And he's just saying, "Shut up! Oh God, just shut up." Anyways, Matt Walkering aside.
I just wanted to put it out there that he is the singular force who made this game possible.
Yes, we love you, Matt. Anyways, moving on. So, Monster Hunter World. So we played through the beta and we hunted a couple of monsters, James. And we just and our conclusion was that this was Monster Hunter-ass Monster Hunter.
Yeah, we hunted, not killed, a couple monsters.
Yeah, because of
we irritated a couple monsters.
Yes, we did. So we our experience there, I would say it's indicative of the final product. However, the final product, I have to say, it's excellent. It is pretty much everything that I have ever wanted out of a Monster Hunter game. It does maintain some of the series idiosyncrasies, I would say, like some goofy UI stuff. Like, a perfect example is you can sort when you're looking at your item box, and you can move items into your pouch to carry around with you, or move items into your item box. There'll be things like you click the right stick to sort your items, and it sorts your items right in front of you, and then it'll ask you. It pops up something saying, "Would you like to sort your items?" Well, yeah, I just clicked R3 to sort my fucking items. Why are you asking me to confirm that? Like, it does it and then asks you to confirm it. So there's some weird UI stuff like that. And it just asks you to confirm everything. It just seems very Japanese, right? I'll do this thing for you, but then if you don't want me to do it, just let me know.
Well, it's just like changing the resolution on your monitor, John. Just in case you changed your mind after you've seen the preview, gives you a chance to back out gracefully.
Yes.
And save face.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of that. So, that kind of goofy stuff aside, there's. I think this is finally the Monster Hunter game where if you're completely new to the series, I think this is probably could be your jumping in point. The game, looks gorgeous, looks amazing. All the varying levels they've kind of really gone above and beyond and really made the levels look different. They're not just your typical kind of jungle areas. They're very vertical, and you have to traverse them in a lot of different ways. You can climb up vines. You can, there's like some ramps that you can run up, and on top of just like the normal climbing up walls and stuff like that. So there's lots of kind of different ways to get around. But I think the main thing here, and this is something that I didn't like in the demo that James and I played, was the scout flies. And the scout flies are actually just a glorified way of saying they're like this little green cloud that highlights things of interest in the environment. And that was one of the problems with the old Monster Hunter games, where even, you have to do a lot of crafting, so you have to go around and gather herbs, mushrooms, all kinds of stuff like that, to make potions and stuff of that sort. And in the old Monster Hunter games, it was always very difficult to pick out those things from the rest of the environment. And Monster Hunter World makes that stuff dead simple. Because as you're walking around your little cloud of scout flies, it'll just fly over and highlight something that you might want to check out, right? So that way you get to you easily see stuff that you should maybe check out without knowing about it. So when you're new to the game, you come in and you're like, oh, okay, well, what's this and what's that? But what it also does is it trains you to see what these things look like. So you'll be able to look at something and you'll say, oh, that is honey. That is an herb. That is obviously this type of mushroom, that type of mushroom kind of thing. So it was one of the things the old games didn't do well, is not only did they not highlight things that you should be interested in, but what that did is it kind of compounded your confusion because you didn't know what they looked like anyways. So if you're looking through your cooking recipes or anything like that, it would say, okay, well, you're looking for honey, for example. You wouldn't really know what that looks like, but not even that. It's probably a bad example, but there's all kinds of obscure types of mushrooms and stuff where you wouldn't know what it was unless you happen to come upon it, pick it up, and realize it's that type of mushroom, and then you walked right up to it and you realize that there was that type of mushroom, right? So it makes that whole kind of process a lot easier, learning what the types of flora and fauna are and, kind of what you can get. It makes gathering easier. It makes all these things easier. So that's huge. And another thing, too, is the way that they use it is they let you track monsters by tracking their footprints. And doing that also adds kind of experience points to your tracking level for those certain monsters, and that influences the way the scout flies behave. So the more you track a certain type of monster, and this is done by either walking up to their footprints and checking out their footprints, or some monsters like James, if you remember, I think one of the monsters that we were tracking left mucus on rocks. So
I do, yes.
Yeah, you would walk up to the rock and scrape off a little bit of mucus. That's the kind of the animation that it does. Well, what that does is the more that you do that with a certain type of monster, it increases your kind of your level of discovery with that monster, and that means that the scout flies, as soon as you find tracks or something like that, once you get to the highest level, the scout flies will basically take you right to the monster. And at a lower level, it might take you to the general area, or maybe kind of it might take you in the direction. Then at the next level, it will take you into the general area where the monster is, and then the highest level will take you right to the thing. So it's kind of something. It's kind of like a subsystem that is rewarding in the sense that the more you track monsters, you're not just repeating it. You're actually gaining experience that makes it easier to track the monster in the first place. So
if you go after the same monster twice, so you kill it once, you go after it again, the scout flies maintain that extra experience?
Yeah. Because that's that's character experience. Right?
It's not an instance experience.
Correct, yeah. So as you track that monster over and over, you can go into your logbook and you'll see that monster there, and you'll see kind of the way the scout flies behave when you're tracking it. So you'll have a whole bunch of monsters, and the ones that you haven't tracked very much, the scout flies it'll say, scout flies guide you in the direction. And then some of them that you've tracked a lot, it'll say scout flies guide you to the monster. So it's a nice little way to kind of make it easier to track these monsters that you've tried to find repeatedly. So and that's a lot about this game. It's a lot of if you're a Monster Hunter fan, you've played several Monster Hunter games and kind of know the drill, you'll be able to pick it up right away. But a lot of the real improvements are kind of in quality of life stuff, the quality of life stuff that just makes it easier to kind of get your job done. There's another thing they added that we didn't have a chance to test out, James, but they have the SOS flares, And what that lets you do is when you're fighting a monster, you can throw up an SOS flare, and it's kind of the same. This game is compared to Dark Souls, which I think is silly for a lot of reasons, but it's kind of like
I'm going to do it right now.
It's kind of like inviting somebody into your instance in Dark Souls or in any of those games. The same kind of thing, where you can throw up an SOS flare and someone can hop into your instance and help you fight a monster, and then they're gone as soon as the monster is either killed or trapped. And on the flip side of that, you can look for an SOS flare, hop into somebody's instance, help them kill or trap the monster, and then hop out. And what that really helps with is one of the main kind of gameplay loops in this game is creating your armor. And as you kill monsters of a certain type, they allow you to create armor based on that monster, and you get into that kind of loop where you're constantly upgrading your armor. But a lot of times what you have to do is you have to kill the same monster several times in order to construct a complete set of armor based on that monster. So what these SOS flares really help with is doing that. So you're like, okay, well, I'm trying to kill an Anjanath. Well, then you find somebody who's thrown up an SOS flare that needs help to fight an Anjanath, and then you go into their instance, kill the Anjanath, and then you're out. So it allows you to kind of do like almost concentrated farming, whereas in the other games you had no choice but to maybe run the same quest over and over, or something like that. Or if you can also do kind of the free roaming where you just go into an area and see what's there. You can do that as well, but now you kind of have this quicker way to sort of jump in and fight a specific monster. So yeah, so I mean I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else.
Let me ask you a question, John.
Sure.
Because I'm at the point right now where beyond Celeste, I'm also looking at one of the 2 PS4 games that came out last weekend. And as somebody who, I would say that our experience trying to hunt monsters when we played was mostly akin to being surprised constantly because something else got in the way. Does that seem like, does the cadence of that seem pretty accurate to the final game?
It depends where you are, but yeah, it's pretty accurate. You'll see the monsters come in and fight each other, but it doesn't happen all the time. Right. It really depends on the area that you're in and which monsters are kind of mixing, right? There's some monsters that are more aggressive than others.
Because when we were out there, it was constant.
Yeah, and that was, I think,
that felt tuned up.
Yeah, it seems to have been a bit toned down. Because I was even in that area with those monsters, and with those 2 monsters, that was the Baroth and like the Giaratidus or something. And those 2 monsters, they didn't fight. They left each other alone. So I think maybe in the final version they've toned that down a little bit.
They didn't pop up in the water just to make shit real.
Yeah, it kind of like came around and they just ignored each other and then it left. But yeah, it's not as prominent. I haven't had as much of that as we did in the demo. So I have a feeling in the demo, maybe they were just trying to show that off and show that can happen.
Gotcha.
But it's not. It doesn't seem as prevalent in what I've played of the retail version.
How is the progression in this game? And I don't mean just like keep making your armor. Like how does it get you into being better at the game?
Let's see. It really does. The one thing it hasn't done yet that continues for me to be a problem is it doesn't tell you how to trap the monster until probably further. I think I'm hunter rank 5 or 6 now. And I've gone a little ways into the single player campaign, which is actually excellent. You do a lot of varied things. But yeah, it's hard. Like my perspective, like I know exactly what I'm doing, so it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for me to tell from my perspective. But they do have a really good training area that you can go to, and kind of learn the different combos for your selected, weapon. But they still don't really do that great a job, I think, kind of guiding you through exactly how you want to fight a monster. Right. I mean, gotcha. I know the cadence. I know the way. I know the way it goes. Like, you beat the monster down until it's limping around, and then
just like the man.
Yeah, exactly. They still don't really do a good job of absolutely spelling that out. Like the quests are still, hey, go hunt a Jagras or a Great Jagras. Just go hunt it, right? Although what they do that's much better is they actually have you go out with your kind of sidekick, the helper, and she goes out and she instructs you much more than was done with voice acting too. So much more than what was done in any of the previous games. Like, you would never have the opportunity to have, a whole lot of voice acting on 3DS. So they do lead you along much better like that in that way. So it's definitely easier than it has been to kind of get into and figure out what you're doing. But still, it's there's still kind of, at least, now maybe it's just because I wasn't really looking out for it, but the one thing they do actually do really well, though, I will say, is that they do have a lot of tutorial windows. So when you encounter something new, they pop up a tutorial window for almost everything, and the tutorial windows have videos with them. So you can play the video and see exactly what they mean, which is really good. Of course, I've never watched any of the videos because I know exactly what they're talking about. I'm just like, okay, get this stupid tutorial out of my face because I know what I'm doing. But that's very impressive, and I can't say that I haven't used some of those tutorial windows, because there is some new stuff that's new to the game that walks you through kind of what the tutorials, and they're not just like a single some single paragraph. They're a couple pages that kind of walk you through. So it's pretty good, and a movie. So in that sense, it's much better than previous games where they kind of handhold you through that stuff. Like, they tell you not only what something is, but how you want to use it, and what you want to do with it and why it's important. Which, I mean, any of the other Monster Hunter games are like, hey, yeah, you can craft things and you can grow mushrooms, and you're like, okay, I have no idea why I would want to use that. Or fishing, yes, you can catch fishes, great. Why would I want to catch fishes? Where like this they answer stuff like that. Like, when you first start fishing, a tutorial window will pop up and say, hey, you're fishing, this is what you do, this is what you use these for, and this is what you can do with fishes in this game, right? Whereas other games that never had that, like, there was very, very low on the tutorial scale, never really told you anything, and so that led to some of the confusion. Like, the only way you could learn, the only way you used to be able to learn Monster Hunter is just by fumbling your way through the first 15 hours of the game and kind of figuring things out and piecing things together after that. So, but this does a much, much better job of that, where they're actually constantly shoving tutorials in your face.
My concern was largely, I watched you and Seren in real time try to figure out how to get into a game together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
unfolding over Twitter.
That is completely goofy. Getting into a game is so weird. The online stuff is really, really weird and confusing. And there's weird stuff, like you can't join somebody's game if they're watching a cutscene. That was the big thing, and of course, while you're working through the story, like what we were trying to do was we were trying to get our kind of story quests in sync, and sort of, and that's the one thing with the single player, with the campaign. I can't say it's a single player campaign because you can do a co-op, but those kind of campaign quests, you have to be at the same quest, right? So it's not like somebody can go 2 quests ahead and then somebody that's 2 quests behind can jump in. I think you can probably do it if you're ahead, you can go back, but even with that, you'll run into things like, okay, well, can I hop into this person's quest yet? Well, no, I can't, because they're in a cutscene. And also, and that's not just a cutscene at the beginning of the quest or something like that. Also, if there's any more cutscenes to go, so in other words, if they're in a quest where they're shown 2 or 3 cutscenes over the course of the quest, you can't jump into their quest until they've seen all those cutscenes. So, and they don't have cutscenes at the end of a quest, but they might have like one where they'll show you a cutscene of the area, and then when you see a notable monster for the first time, they'll show you a cutscene. And so only after you see that last cutscene can somebody jump in and help you with your quest. So there's goofy stuff like that, and again, the UI can be kind of like, what am I doing? Things are buried 3 or 4 levels deep. There's stuff like that. But it's Monster Hunter. You kind of get used to some of that stuff being rough around the edges. I mean,
Well, I mean, it's but you're saying it is a well-made game, clearly made by professional Matt Walkers.
it is.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's by the one-man band Matt Walker. Absolutely. Yep.
He's
But
back to turning off the. He just turned the podcast back on to come back and hear that, has immediately turned it back off and is upset again.
But yeah, I mean, overall, it's fantastic, and I mean, they've already like shipped 5 million copies or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's really, really good. I'm really impressed. I'm actually shocked. There's a lot of kind of silliness in there, like I was describing. The one thing, I was fighting a monster in a swamp. Actually the swamp where we were watching the monsters attack each other, James. And I realized that my Palico, which is your feline companion that you can craft armor for and outfit in armor. I realized that and your Palico, he just goes off. I mean, they're AI. Companions, right? So they just, when you're fighting the monster, they're fighting the monster too, and trying to do their little thing, do whatever you've configured them to do. Some of them tank, and some of them are healers, sort of thing. Like you can kind of configure them how you want. But I realized, I look and we're fighting in the water, in this swamp, and I look over and I realize that my Palico, instead of just running around in the water like you would expect, he's actually in a little yellow raft, paddling around in the water, in the swamp, whacking away at the monster. And I was like, this fucking game, there's just so much, there's so much detail and kind of just silliness in this game that you don't even notice until you really look. It's just a lot of effort put into this game. And so it's really impressive. So definitely, I mean, if you have ever been interested in Monster Hunter but figured that it was too difficult or too hard to get into, Monster Hunter World will probably be the best way to start out.
All right, fair enough. So we might spend a little time on there if that's the way I end up folding.
Yeah, I think you should pick it up. I think we would have fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's just a weird situation where it's like, hey, it's February and there's two games that. But I haven't played either of those games. I've been trying to clear out the backlog. Which I've been doing an admirable job with, but some of the games I haven't talked about on here. But I'm going to talk about this one because it merits talking about, and that is Titanfall 2. It has been a while since I played a proper first-person shooter. It's not that I don't enjoy that genre, it's just that I don't enjoy what that genre's become, if that makes sense. I really enjoyed proper first-person, or single-player first-person shooter campaigns, and was kind of less involved in the multiplayer stuff. And it felt like, at least from the big players, their games have really started to trend towards, funneling you into the multiplayer, and then a lot of them have adopted economic models that are kind of unpleasant, consumable, randomly generated crap, stuff like that. But Titanfall had no single-player mode, effectively, which they strongly reversed course on in Titanfall 2. And they put a big old campaign on it. And I got it pretty cheap, and I figured, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I like robots. Fuck, I like robots.
And is this on PS4 or Xbox One?
Yeah, I'm playing this on PS4 Pro. I figured that was probably the better way to play it of the two. And I burned through the single-player campaign except for the last 2 minutes, which I had to stop because of the show, which is really frustrating when you're 2 minutes from the end of a game. But here we are. If you haven't really heard much about Titanfall, which is predictable because the game didn't do super great, it's kind of your standard future first-person shooter, but everything's different. You play in the single-player mode. You are a pilot of a Titan, which is a big giant robot that periodically just drops from the sky, hence the name. But in the single player, you're playing a soldier who has essentially been part of an invasion that went real south. And he has been effectively combat promoted to a pilot. And most of the game is you platforming. It's a lot less about shooting and a lot more about jumping, because Titanfall 2 has some fucking movement to it. It feels really good. Within a few minutes of the game really getting underway, you've got a double jump, you can wall run, You can wall run into double jump into wall run. You can turn invisible for really brief moments of time. At one point, you can shift time, which is crazy. So a lot of the game is less about shooting, although you do a lot of shooting, and more about locomotion. And don't stop. Keep going. Because as you bounce between walls, as you double jump, as you wall run, you gain speed. And I don't know if there's a point where you stop gaining speed, but I've gotten to the point in this game where I'm going really fast. Because it feels really good, and it's really easy to execute. And the levels are really well built for it. Like, the level design in this game is really clever. You're blasting through an enemy base that's just full of enemies, but it's in ruins because a weapon's gone off and it went really badly. And it's full of these robots that are trying to secure it, and soldiers. And you have to climb up this structure to get to the top, to get the thing that you need to get. Because most of the game's plot is your robot tells you, we need to get this thing. He kind of points at it, and then you go get the thing. And then you come back down, and then you and the robot fight a bunch of enemies, and then you use the thing, and then you go to the next area. But there is, like, the levels are really well designed, so there's this constant climbing, and then when you get the thing, it's a bit like, go back to BT, which is the name of your robot. And there's some platforming trick that makes going back down a hell of a lot easier and quicker. So you always feel like you're going forward. You always feel like there's a quick speed to your, because the act of platforming makes you go faster. And the enemies are kind of they're like, the bullets sort of auto target to them. So you really do feel like a god. Because you're basically moving at twice the speed the enemies can, above, flying overhead, invisible, dropping down behind them and just shooting all of them before they even have a chance to turn around, or tossing a grenade or whatever.
Yeah, and what I like too is that one of the things that I thought they did really, really well was they showed you. I mean, they literally tell you, like, with the green sort of guidelines,
yes,
exactly how, like, they train you really, really well on how to wall jump optimally. Like, they spell it out. Like, every time you encounter a new obstacle or a new way where you might want to use wall jumping to traverse the environment, they painstakingly show you, like, with a green line, like, jump here, then here, then here, and then do this. So they do a really good job of that.
In fact, if you stand at a spot that's a platforming area for more than a second, it'll start scanning. And when the scan completes, it'll actually put a ghost on screen to show you what to do.
Yep.
Like a 3D model of your character, hologram projected onto the walls, where you need to make the jump, how you need to make the run, what angle you should attack at. And there have been a couple times where I'm looking at the stage and I'm like, I don't know where you want me to go here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watch the character and I'm like, oh, I can make that jump? All right, let's try it. And generally speaking, it's been right. You know, there have been a few cheap deaths to the game's platforming. But, you know, the only time I really get annoyed at this game is when it slows me down. When it's like, no, you're in a kill room now. You have to actually do the kill room thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not what the game's great at. Because, I mean, you are a single soldier with 1 billion enemies around you. It's like, I probably shouldn't try to fight everyone. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. Visually, there's some really cool moments in this game, especially when you can start just manipulating time. And then, of course, when you hook back up with your robot, you get to get in a giant mech and just completely blow everything up, which is a hell of a lot of fun. I'm not sure if it's the speed is just right for the mech stuff, because a lot of mech games try to feel plotting. And then you have things like Armored Core, which in early Armored Core games are plotting, but later ones are just way too fast. There's kind of like a nice mix of speed and power to the mechs in this game, or the Titans. And there's always an exciting moment of like, I'm gonna fight a Titan now, and then you roll up and there's like 9 Titans, and you think, oh, I'm gonna destroy all of these guys. They're done. Because much like your character has all kinds of useful powers, the Titans themselves have really awesome techniques that, if deployed correctly, kind of make you unkillable. And Late, like I said, I'm in the very last end of the game, and there was a D-Day style. We're seizing a beachhead, and we blew the wall, and there's just an army of Titans come through it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And that mission was probably the most deaths I accumulated in any one spot, because it is such a goddamn mess there. But like, I pieced it together. You know, I was using cover. I was kind of moving in and out. I was charging up my ultra attack to then kind of position myself to unload on a bunch of Titans, and then drop back to reload my gun. The only downside is that the button to disembark just kind of accepts that input in the middle of this huge fucking firefight.
Yeah.
And so, like, as I'm frantically trying to remember what button is mapped to what, I'll hit square and end up getting out of the Titan and then just dying immediately because there's just shrapnel everywhere.
Yep.
Maybe the game should have come with some sort of little plastic lid that you put over the button.
Do not
so
press
that
the
you have to
button.
flip it up.
You have to flip it up before you press
Yep.
it.
And while a lot of the game is stealthing around and punching dudes in the head with your body armor and just killing them on the spot, there is a lot of gunplay, and there are a lot of guns in this game. And they mostly feel pretty good. There's a story mandatory electric gun you have to carry around for a while, and it feels like ass. And not being able to change it sucks. But in general, because you are, soldier behind enemy lines guy, you're just constantly improvising, so you don't get to just pick a weapon and stick with it, because you're going to run out of ammo. And like I said, a lot of it's not about the shooting, but I went through tens of thousands of rounds in this game. Like, I would get a gun with 140 bullets, and I would have completely exhausted it during a firefight and switch to a different one. The advantage was that I was moving way faster than everyone else. Like, I was jumping around on the ceiling, shooting down. They were trying to keep up with me. Or I was jumping in and out of time. And so you would essentially, there was a cataclysmic event, and time became distorted. So you can bounce between right before the event or the modern time. And right before the event's full of enemies. And what you're doing there is influencing the present. But also, there's hostiles in the present, too. So you're, like, bouncing between them, managing two firefights at the same time. Which is crazy. And there's little, like, distortions that show where the enemies were for, like, a split second when you jump between them. And so there's a lot of, like, I have a bad position. I'm going to jump, change my position to where I know you are. Jump back on time and just unload into you. And that kind of, it's not the same, but it kind of gave me a comparable feeling to, like, really late game in Zone of the Enders 2, when you're just full powerful, and the game is still full of enemies, but there's nothing they can do. You're just way too strong to deal with them. Mm-hmm. And, like, you don't even have to worry about them. The game basically auto-kills them for you. That's kind of where this game gets with most run-of-the-mill enemies at the end, but that's okay. Like, I like feeling that powerful. So yeah, this game is neat. And even though I'm probably not going to spend much time with the multiplayer, if any, as a single-player game alone, it's really good.
Yeah, the campaign is incredible. It's really, really good.
It tells a really cool story. The levels are incredibly well designed for what this game's toolkit is. It's a little repetitious sometimes, where it's like, okay, I have to climb up and hit the switch again. This is the fourth switch I've hit in this room. Can we stop doing this? But it's really well made. All the guns feel good. All the movement feels amazing. It's got a great pace. Like, I'm probably going to have finished it in about 6-ish hours. But, I mean, I ripped through this game. It's fun. Like, there's just moments of, I'm in a firefight, and I'm just using my skills to maneuver against 10 guys, and I'm just roaring through guns. But at no point am I not completely in charge. Like, I know I'm in charge of this fight. They're reacting to me, and there's nothing they can do to stop me. And that is a great fucking feeling. Because, yeah, you're overpowered. Pilots are overpowered. The game, even as a story beat, admits this, that pilots are just completely overpowered. But to keep you still feeling like you're doing a good job, you still have to execute. It's not like an auto-complete the combo thing. Like, you have to plan what you want to do and manage that speed. And that feels really good. All right, well, Guillaume.
Yeah, so I did not put that on the outline, but I played a little bit of Mercenary Kings, a game that I had on Steam through probably a bundle. It was not a game that I actually bought for myself. I just got it with other stuff that interested me. But the game has been announced for Switch, and it's coming out this week. And it was announced like very kind of quickly, and it's even getting a physical release through limited run games. And it was announced after Flint Hook had also been announced by the same developer, but it's coming before, and it seems like I guess they announced Flint Hook first because it's the more acclaimed game of the two, and Mercenary Kings is like, I think it has its fans, but it doesn't have the cachet that Flint Hook has. But yeah, so I played a little bit of that, and it's not really a game for me. It's this 2D action side-scrolling game, and it looks very much in style like Metal Slug. And you're playing as mercenaries, so you're in the jungle, and it's got that very kind of 80s action movie like Rambo kind of feel to it, and so you've got guns and you shoot down the human enemies, and it's pretty violent, just like Metal Slug. Heads can explode if you get headshots in a 2D game, yes. And you can also stab enemies to death. And but other than human enemies, you also got like fantastical enemies like Mandragora roots, Mandrake roots. Anyway, and like I don't know, like weird like robotic snails and stuff like that. So again, kind of like Metal Slug, it's a little bit out there in terms of fantasy kind of setting, despite the kind of the jungle mercenary kind of theme it has. But unlike Metal Slug, it's not just a run to the right and shoot everything kind of game. It's got more of a Monster Hunter structure where you're given missions. Like there's a list of missions. You start at your base camp and talk to your colonel, and you can only select missions that you've unlocked according to your rank, and so finishing missions gives you money and also improves your rank, and then you can take on higher ranking missions. And I did exactly just the first mission in the game, and I kind of had an inkling that it was not for me. So the mission was kind of just a search and rescue. I had to rescue one hostage, but there was a timer on it, and I failed to rescue the hostage within the time limit. So 12 minutes just gone, lost, and I had to play again. And the level was kind of labyrinthine, but not really. There were just many paths to go to the hostage, which was all the way to the right. So the game was linear, but there were lots of paths that I could not take because I did not have the abilities yet. And I guess like some paths were better than others in terms of the enemies that you encounter. And I don't know, like I kind of wanted, I think, more of a Metal Slug kind of experience. And what I got instead was I was playing by myself a game where I'm sure the experience is much better when you're playing with 3 other people, because it is co-op, it is online. You can invite people to join you and start, like scouring the level with you. And I did not do that. And Karen, liked the sprite art, and she liked the fact that there's like, cute cat pets, at the base camp. But she liked less the fact that you can go in the hunting grounds and shoot down cute bunnies and stuff. And she was not super into the gore also of the rest of the game. So basically I was looking at playing this game by myself, and it's clearly meant to be a co-op experience, and so I just gave up on it. But also I'm kind of wondering, like, the game got okay reviews, not great, and I'm wondering, like, what is that going to look like on the Switch in terms of voice chat? And I guess I already know people are just gonna go in Discord to chat, but it's pretty weak, you know. So I don't know. Maybe it's a game for some people to look out for this week. To if you can't get your Monster Hunter on the Switch, then maybe you can start looking for similar experiences. But I'm not sure if this is it or not. If that's what. Anyway, I'm rambling. The other thing that I played this week is I finished Thimbleweed Park, and I had been playing it on easy, and I had been playing it with Karen, and we both really, really enjoyed it. And so I had been playing it on casual mode, and that just meant that there was basically no friction going through the story, and just taking in the jokes and all of that. So it took us a little bit less than 10 hours to finish it. I think the game is probably almost double that when you actually do all the puzzles.
I think I was about 15.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, and it was just like we just basically played through it the same way that we'll sit through like a season of a sitcom on Netflix. So I don't know. By that I mean, I guess that if Thimbleweed Park, if you don't have nostalgia for adventure games, if you haven't played them back in the day, don't let that stop you necessarily. Like it's just a fun and funny game, and it's something that you can easily experience with other people. It's just a ton of fun, and the writing is really good. The voice acting is really good.
Turn off the in-jokes.
Well, I actually, they're turned off by default. I turned them on, and I thought they were good, but I enjoyed them. Yeah, Karen, who's a doctor of English literature herself, praised the writing. So it's not just me saying it. So yeah, like it was just really, really fun, and I'm actually kind of considering playing it again on the harder difficulty because. We went through it pretty smoothly. We called the hint line maybe a couple of times. But usually, because I've played this type of game before, sometimes I would kind of flag clues that I would see. Like, I understand the logic of this developer in particular. And so, like, I kind of knew, like, oh, okay, this is going to come in handy somewhere else. Like, I can kind of figure out where this is going. And other times, Karen was the one who picked up on something and just gave me the answer to the puzzle, and so we collaborated that way, and it was, as I said, pretty frictionless. But at the same time, I'm interested in seeing what the game looks like on hard, because I feel like maybe I flagged clues for puzzles that ended up not being in the game that I was playing. In casual mode, they just took out those puzzles.
Right.
And so I'm kind of intrigued to see what the actual intended experience was like.
I would guess I called the hint line about 10 times. And I would say in 3 of those cases, the hint line hint was actually not very good. And eventually I was like, you know what, Internet, you're going to have to help me on this one. There's one in particular in the convenience store that was really weird. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that you're going to want to play this game again, though, because I think.
Well, maybe not right now, but
okay.
I don't know. Like I feel like I could go through it again. Like I like these characters, and I think you missed some of the plot points when you play on casual. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what I missed. And yeah, so that's what I've been playing.
Okay, cool. Well, that is going to do it for New Business. We are going to take a break, and then we come back. We will fail at predictions. I mean, we'll succeed at giving you them, and we will fail at executing on them. So stay tuned for that. Because you demanded it, and we are your little dancing toy. Just wind it up, and there we go. You ungrateful bastards. Stay tuned. It's that time of year again. You can hear the excitement in my predictions. We're going to do some predictions. We're going to predict things that are going to happen in the next calendar year as defined from apparently the start of February to December. and we're gonna get them wrong. It's gonna be great. You're gonna listen to us. Somebody's gonna put in the comments at Nintendo World Report what we predicted, and then a year from now they're gonna go like, "Hey, how did you guys do? You're gonna do predictions this year?" And then we'll go review these and say we were wrong. Thankfully, because Nintendo gave us the big Switch blowout last year, we don't have any predictions to review, which means we were all perfect. Perfect angels, like John Lindemann.
Thanks, man.
So, because I have given you that praise, hey, John, what's your first prediction?
My first prediction is that... Let me just pull them up here. I think at E3, we will see Monster Hunter 5 announced for Switch.
Oh.
I think that Monster Hunter World, since that is now out, and they have kind of Xbox and PS4, that whole segment of the market squared away. I think that the Switch is now much too popular to ignore, and I think that having Monster Hunter 5 come out for it would make perfect sense because it's a kind of a portable system, and that's all of the previous... Many of the previous games in the main series have come out on portable systems, so that would just kind of follow that. I think it was interesting that Monster Hunter World was not called Monster Hunter 5. It was kind of segmented off as its own thing, and I think that's because they are going to keep the main series going on Switch.
Fair enough. I would ask for more like, but what if this? But we're gonna be wrong, so it's fine. So Monster Hunter 5 is canceled. I'm gonna go next. I think we will see another Kirby game this year for 3DS. I'm fucking serious.
Because any thoughts on what kind?
Oh God! Like at this point, I mean, I think we're going in the Robobot model again.
Well, but Star Allies is coming out in March, and that's very
but is it the
much
same team?
Well, fair enough. I'm just thinking, it seems a bit dense even for Kirby.
I mean, they've dropped 2 of these damn things in such rapid succession. Here's the thing. Nintendo's made it clear that they intend to ride out the 3DS. And while they have said that, in general, they're going to ride it out based on the strength of its back catalog, they did want to continue to produce new games for it. And I think, what is the easiest route for them to produce a new game of decent enough quality? Well, it's to reuse that Kirby... What was the original game?
Triple Deluxe was the
Triple Deluxe / Robobot engine. And it's been a little while since that game came out, and they could certainly hand that off to another team and go, I don't know, make me another one. And release that in October, November, bundle it with a 3DS model that's got Kirby's gob printed on it, and just walk away.
With the recent earnings report and all that, when they have the chart of what they're going to be bringing out on the respective systems, the 3DS one is laughably blank. Mainly, of course, we haven't really discussed this, but the retail package localized Detective Pikachu is pretty much the only game in town as it stands for now. So, and Sushi Striker, I guess.
Great Sushi Striker.
I mean, if they are, as you said, they've been very clear that it's mostly going to be about leveraging the catalog titles, which some of which added as things like the top performers like Mario Kart 7, New Super Mario Bros. 2 added 1 million in sales globally.
Yes.
Like in the past year or whatever. So, I mean, that could work for them. But it probably isn't going to be mostly new games. But if there's going to be anything, they're pretty much going to have to announce it because it isn't on the docket right now.
Yeah, I would think that's the kind of thing you would announce at a Direct. You'd say, like, after the next Kirby comes out, you'd say, hey, and 3DS owners, there's another Kirby game coming your way. Kirby and we're running out of things to call this game coming out this December to your 3DS. This time, Kirby absorbs enemies and gains his powers, and shit, it's the same script from last time, isn't it? And then the Direct will just cut to a black screen, and then we'll cut back, and we'll see more about, like, some weird Switch game. So that's my nihilist version of the Nintendo Direct. Guillaume, what do you got?
Do you want to know?
It's a justifiable question.
I am contractually obligated to ask.
treats this exercise with the contempt it arguably deserves, but contempt it is nonetheless.
So, Nintendo, unveiled Nintendo Labo, which seems to get a lot of hype. But Nintendo also had a contingency plan, in case people didn't really fall in love with Nintendo Labo. And so, because otherwise they would be on the hook to buy, tons and tons of cardboard, and they wouldn't have anything to do with it. So their contingency plan, which they're still going to roll out just after Labo has caught on, is Nintendo Gimo. And it's instead of selling cardboard robots to kids, they're going to sell cardboard gym equipment to adults to kind of fill in the void. Fill in the void left by the absence of a Wii Fit on the Switch, So you remember, was it Wii Fit or Wii Sports Resort, where you could sit on a balance board and do a rowing game, and so here, they're going to use the same parts as the robot, cardboard robot, and so the strings instead of just. Yeah, strings and pulleys. Yes. Yeah, the strings and pulleys, instead of, being used for a robot, you're going to be rowing, you're going to be all that stuff. So, yeah, I kind of ran out of juice there, but you get the idea, right?
For adults.
For adults, yes.
Me.
So that's what I got.
We really just, if we're going to do this, we really just need to let everybody go, and then, all right, Guillaume.
Yep.
Just go.
I'm sorry.
Because now I have to put Greg in here, and I'm sorry.
You say so,
but I kind of think that it's not totally unlikely.
This is one of the more...
cardboard gym equipment has some flaws as a design.
This is one of the more grounded ones that you've given us over the years. But yeah, I like the idea if we do some... Guillaume comes in with the ostensibly silly ones at the end that end up being more on target than ours. That's how it's meant to work, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything's going according to plan right now.
Well, I mean, you say this is one of the more grounded ones, but Nintendo's already shown us they're going to fucking sell us glitter this year. So as part of Labo, so I mean, it's entirely plausible that Glitter Metroid was actually closer to reality than we ever knew.
Yeah. I can't wait for, the flame decals for whatever it is that we build for with Nintendo Gimo. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Greg.
Well, yes, it's a very unenviable position to be put in to follow that.
I apologize.
So I was kind of trying to think about this. It's sort of building a little scenario for it's about the back 6 months of the year, or 7 months of the year, because with the recent direct and some of the stuff coming out of the earnings report and all that, we've got a bunch of things that are slotted. So I'm trying to piece together a scenario and then slot in the predictions kind of as it unfolds. So the first thing was, I guess, before the direct of a few weeks ago, I might have put the Yoshi game as maybe in that ARM slot from last year, right around E3. But given that DKC Tropical Freeze, we now know, exists for Switch and is coming out in May, doesn't seem as likely to me that game's going to occupy that slot. I think what is going to go in that slot is Mario Tennis Aces. Seems like pretty analogous in some ways to ARMS, what it's trying to hit, so I could see that maybe go to June, and then Yoshi being that kind of late summer game later on. But really my predictions kick in September. The first thing I think is that is when we're going to see the NES Classic Mini reprint that we've been kind of promised. And I think this time they're going to tack on some to the price, but they're going to bundle in the second joypad this time, as they sort of did with a Super NES Mini, rather than having it as a separate, kind of purchase. Get the longer cables as well. Was it 3 feet versus 5, I think, from NES Mini to Super NES Mini? So that would be helpful. to have the longer cables. And also, it wouldn't surprise me if they tweaked the games that are on it, perhaps more to reflect two-player stuff. Maybe, they've got some analytics about, if some of the 30 games basically went totally unused, sort of iffy arcade ports of like a really early Famicom era kind of stuff, or could go, and then maybe something else could come in that would exploit the two players. Well, I'm not expecting like them to pull a Star Fox 2 and have like secretly localized Joy Mech fight or something, but I can't imagine be anything that exciting. But it could also be licensing stuff, like in terms of I don't know what the deal would be with like getting all the third-party games back. Maybe that could be an issue, so it wouldn't surprise me if the games are different, even though there might not be more of them. But I think they're bound to be able to, they'll justify jacking up the price while at the same time kind of massaging that sore spot that must exist there for them. Like, God damn, we didn't charge enough for this the first time. But, like, especially with how few they shipped, the secondary market prices embarrassingly showed how low they pitched it the first time. So they could definitely claw some of that back this time.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll get, like, even if they'd even consider making changes to it beyond just the bundle, like maybe different games, or maybe they might have to do different games because of licenses they originally signed.
I just said all of that. I feel like I'm not being paid attention to, which in this sub-segment above all else is just, how could you not pay attention to what I'm saying? It's the future, James. It's going to happen.
I'm trying to fix my microphone, Greg. I just knocked it over. I'm sorry.
Greg is trying to warn us. We're not listening.
Cassandra over here.
He is the guy standing on the street corner with the placard.
Fuck you, all right?
And Marjorie Tyrell screaming, "We all need to leave now," and you're doing nothing.
I'm sorry. I just fixed my mic again. Jesus Christ. What I was trying to get as I'm trying to figure out what games would be most likely to be impacted.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I never had it, so the 30 is not as clear in my mind as it probably is for some people.
Would they call it the classic NES Classic now? That's the
reprint
edition. It would be the new classic.
The new NES Classic New Edition.
Mm-hmm.
New Classics Edition. I mean, a lot of the NES Classic is their stuff, so that's not such a big deal. But
yeah, but they had a fair amount. You think of stuff like Tecmo Bowl and especially for out west, Castlevanias and Namco stuff, and I mean it was a little bit broader than Super NES naturally because it was that 50% sort of bigger.
I mean, Final Fantasy is the one I'd be most worried about. Like where licensing could have been like, no, we'll give you a set, but that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably one of the least played, too. Unfortunately. We're talking about analytics.
I was thinking more about the fact that, like getting those on the Virtual Console in the West was always dodgy.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but I mean, it didn't stop her from putting Final Fantasy 3/6 on the Super NES, Mini. So I know what you mean. With Square, how much they prize their old games for their remake, reissue, whatever it is, potential. That you can have questions about it, but hopefully. The people will get the games they want to see back, but I wouldn't expect a big overhaul. Maybe just some tinkering around the edges for whatever reasons it might be. Like I said, maybe to play up the two-player a little more. Although there were a number of games, of course, that did have the two-player angle already.
Yeah, I mean, if people want the games they want, so take Ice Climbers out of there, just get rid of it, and we'll be good to go. Simon's Quest, you could probably go. John.
All right. My next sure shot. Club banger of a prediction. I believe that Nintendo will inform the public in 2018 that Metroid Prime 4 will have online multiplayer. I think that with the new expertise that they have acquired with Splatoon 2, that they will be willing to add online multiplayer instead of just having it have a campaign mode. And will it have loot crates? I don't know. Maybe.
You'll have Chozo statues falling from the sky on the beach.
Yeah.
But you just get crushed under them because
I
they
just love the idea of a sort of Chozo statue all beautifully rendered and weathered and all that kind of stuff, and then, you know, she takes the thing out of its hands, then it isn't what she wants, so she just puts like a quarter in a little slot on the side, and then another one pops up.
So the thing about those is all about the animation for when they open. So I like the idea she takes it off and then just confetti sprays everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get you excited again. Like, it glows in weird ways, and like a strobe effect, and some music plays, but not like the standard music, but like upbeat, exciting music.
The dance remix of the item.
Yeah, there you
fanfare,
go.
Yeah.
And then it's just like an alternate spray for a game that has no sprays. So she can just mark the caves as she goes through them. Samus was here.
Yep, so in 2019, you'll be enjoying Metroid 4 online multiplayer with loot
That
boxes.
sounds like a fucking nightmare, John.
The fact that they debuted that as just a logo at the last time kind of says, like, well, even though I think we all expect that it's going to be, 2019 before we see anything really substantial out of that game, that you've set a bit of a precedent now, isn't it? That you kind of have to have some kind of update this year that's an actual glimpse at a game rather than just a logo.
They'll have one piece of key art.
Yep.
Yeah, so, I mean, it could be really insubstantial. I mean, what you also got to remember, I suppose, historically, when Nintendo is riding high in terms of financial results and all that kind of stuff, the time horizon tends to change in terms of what they're willing to talk about. So, the stuff that is more about next year, they'll feel less obliged to talk about than they would do if it was a situation where, it's panic stations and, we've got a gin up interest in the system. They're not going to feel too obligated to talk about 2019 stuff at this E3. I'm sure there'll be some, but it'll probably be pretty limited.
Yeah, I'm thinking it'll be a teaser or just something very small. But
So we've now made it so Metroid Prime 4 is a single-player only game coming out in 2018. Good job, John.
2020, actually.
It came out in 2016. We just didn't see it.
Mm-hmm. It'll be coming out in 2020. Don't worry about it.
That's true. I didn't think about the alternate theory. So all of these remakes are ports, really, not even remakes. All these Wii U ports. And if you're listening to the show, you might be wondering, what's a Wii U? Well, it's a console that came out a few years ago. It didn't do so hot. And so a lot of the games from the Wii U have been making their way over to Switch. And there's a handful of conspicuous absences that we have not seen. The Wonderful 101, which was teased in much the same way that Bayonetta 1 and 2 were teased by Platinum. I'm not predicting that. I think that game has some control issues that would be difficult to
replicate faithfully in the Switch.
Yes. But more pressingly, also, it sold like a bag of dog crap. So, probably not high on the priority list.
It's intriguing, isn't it, with that? It's like, especially if they put a lot of like time and effort into it, does that make it more likely in a perverse way? Because it's like, no, we really believe in this. We think it could do better if it's not hamstrung by the Wii U. Or is it just, that's the throwing good money after bad, don't do it?
I mean,
the former is just a sunk cost fallacy again.
Yeah, exactly. But you've seen that happen, whether it should have done or not, from a commercial point of view.
It did poorly by Wii U standards, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, you could say, like, it would have done better not on Wii U, and I could say, yeah, but it still did.
Yeah, even within the
bad.
small pond, it didn't do very well. Even though I played it, I liked it. I think, if they could actually spend some more time on it and iron some things out, it could be, a significantly better game. But like, the economic imperative to do that, I'm not seeing where it is, but it was teased, so maybe, Bayonetta certainly is the bigger name. You're building up for the third one, maybe next year, whenever the hell that's going to be. So that obviously is ahead of the queue. Doesn't mean it's the end of the queue.
But that's not the game I'm going to talk about. Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE. I think that's a game that actually would benefit from being ported over. There's not
the biggest benefit that I've seen straight away, and I talked about this back when the game came out, is the fact that it didn't have off-screen play.
No, it did not.
So, the way that I managed to get so many hours in with, Xenoblade X, for instance, it was never going to happen with Tokyo Mirage Sessions, so I didn't get it. And, the fact that this would be obviously fully portable would be a major upgrade in its desirability for me, and probably for quite a number of people, I would have thought.
Well, and there's not a ton of JRPGs right now for it to compete against. The problem is that the team who made it has been split two ways at Atlas. And so Nintendo would have to find the resources to port it themselves, which could be tricky. So that's not my answer either. Xenoblade Chronicles X. A game that is actually not playable to its fullest extent now, because so much of that game is about the online interaction, and that shit been turned off. Xenoblade Chronicles X will be announced as a port to Switch, with the online mode reactivated. And I will say on this show, I'm not playing that game again. You will then jump cut 2 months in the future, and I'll be playing that game again, and being mad about it, because they'll have added an actual fucking ending.
Oh, you're going to be mad if they had an ending?
Because I don't have to play the fucking game to get to it.
Oh, I was just saying, you've bitched about how, the way they handled the ending as it was. I would have thought you'd be happy.
No, they didn't handle the ending. That's the problem.
Yes, yeah, you know what I mean. Non-handling, however you want to look at it.
Excluding the ending. They're going to include the ending, and I'm going to have to play the game again. But it'll be okay, because they'll add more blades for me to... Not blades of the people in this game.
What, skells?
Skells. Yeah, they're going to add more skells, and it's going to just become like the Skell fashion party in this place.
There's just going to be a Skell that's like the giant poppy thing from
oh, yeah.
Xenoblade.
It'll be Skell savvy, and Seren will love it.
Oh, no!
Oh, well done, John. Well done, sir. There you go.
It'll be Lila.
Yeah, it could be.
God, yeah. You know what? I'd be all in on that. But yeah, that's two-part prediction. One, they're gonna announce it with some new features and stuff. Two, I'm gonna end up buying it and be mad about it. Guillaume.
Yeah, well, 2018 we'll see Nintendo, after Nintendo shocked the world a few months ago by partnering with Kellogg to bring us the Nintendo cereal.
Oh, no.
They're going to strengthen their partnership with Kellogg, and Kellogg is actually going to put an AIBO in all of their, sugar crap. And so we are going to be... That will effectively make Kellogg's mascots playable in Nintendo's games. And, I expect 2018 will have a lot of people complaining about Tony the Tiger being overpowered in Smash. And so some of
he is great.
He is great. And there's just you can replace Talkatoo with Toucan Sam in Super Mario Odyssey. And what better? There's one mascot I think is a shoe-in for stereotype repository Punch-Out. And it's, of course, the Lucky Charms Leprechaun.
That's true, because Aaron Ryan is not as much of a cartoon Irishman as, for instance, Conor McGregor, who's real.
It's true.
So, I mean, they've got more to go there. I think an actual leprechaun it would balance things out.
It would be kind of refreshing, actually.
Are you saying that Nintendo needed to be more insensitive?
As a man with an Irish name, I'm not really. I shouldn't advocate for that, but still. I want everyone to get treated equally badly.
You do raise a good point though about Mr. McGregor, who is actually like a walking caricature. But I mean, Aaron Ryan's not great.
He's a cheat, isn't he? Which I don't even really. How does that fit into an Irish stereotype? It never really worked for me. I mean, the Narcissus Prince, the British guy who's like really vain, and if you hit him in the face, he just loses his mind. Like, okay, it's a bit weak, but I can live with it. But Aaron Ryan never made sense to me.
I'm trying to figure out what you would have had them do with him to make it better, and I'm afraid to say anything.
Yeah, I know. It's just it's a minefield, isn't it?
Like, there's literally anything I say could be a disaster, so we're just not going to say anything.
Yeah, and that's literally all there was to my prediction. It was very much a one-note joke. So let's move on.
Well, so you're back on my timeline. Something else is happening in September that Nintendo just talked about, and that is the online service. So this is the latest date that we've been given for them to start this online service and all that. And so I'm gonna go along with their prediction that it's gonna launch in that month this time, like a year late. But there's a few things that go along with that I think are interesting. First part of my prediction is, I think, given that it is a year later than they said it was going to be, and you're going to have a situation where people would have been playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, some people for like almost a year and a half online for free. I think they're going to wuss out on kind of people not being able to play online for free in some capacity. I think in the end, this package, we've already seen them kind of evolve it over to it's going to be a retro game a month that everybody will play together. And now, they're talking more about, it gives you ongoing access to a catalogue of retro games, and goodness knows where it's, what sort of conception they've got of it by the time it actually does materialise in September or later, presumably. But I'm not sure that they're going to have the wherewithal to say, to sort of take online play away from people, because it is a tricky sort of thing. Really, it's the sort of thing that should be handled at the start of a hardware generation. And obviously, when they were gonna do that originally, a year earlier than now it appears it will be, wasn't quite there. That was a little bit behind schedule, but not terminally so. But, once you get to September this year, I think they're going to find it difficult to stomach the amount of kind of negative reaction and PR that it's going to generate to say, okay, now, you've had this thing. It's perverse in a way because people have had it for longer. You could say, well, you had your fill, right? But no, it'll feel more like something being taken away, I think. And I don't know that they've got the stomach to follow through. And sort of on the flip side of that, what they're going to have to do is offer, more kind of positive reasons to pay the $20 or whatever it is that they've been discussing. Again, we'll see if that's actually what it ends up being when we get to September. To say, this is a worthwhile upgrade, and you wonder how it could pan out in terms of maybe people can play sort of basic online functionality, but maybe there's these kind of community features or something that they're going to be introducing alongside with the access to classic games or other perks, and all this other stuff. But I've got a hard time seeing Nintendo, which is so, kind of usually very careful about not wanting to, kind of set off a firestorm of anger amongst any sector of its fan base or its user base, really, that they're going to do that now. So I think that's the first part of the prediction, that part of the plan will have changed. Second part is, when you are trying to get people to get in on it, you've got to have a game. And originally that game was going to be Splatoon 2, wasn't it? But, they didn't have their plans ready in time, evidently, or whatever. So that will have been on the market for more than a year by the time we get there. So you've got to. What I'm thinking is, what is the best sort of game they can go with, to be the online kind of launch title, and perhaps have emphasise the fact that this is something you can play basically online in some fashion, but if you've actually sort of paid the subscription service, then maybe you get some kind of deeper kind of interaction with it or whatever. And the two candidates I can really kind of think of here, we've got the Smash question looms large. We're all waiting for that to make the jump, even though it has sold ridiculously well on 3DS. It's not like I think it's like 9 million or something. I mean,
yeah, it's a big high number.
Yeah, and then you get the Wii U sales, on top too. So it's not like that's one of those games that didn't get its day in the sun, but it can sell plenty more on Switch, that's for sure. But the other one I'm thinking about, and I think this is what I'm going to go with the prediction, is a Mario Maker sequel or port, whatever that might be. Not sure what form it would take, but I could see that being something that they would like to be as the flagship.
I could see them doing something like, if you have a paid subscription, then you can save your Mario Maker levels in the cloud or something like that.
So some kind of that has the capacity to demonstrate sort of some kind of additional perks by being a member of the subscription service, while still having the core functionality for people who aren't, of like, I can play for these levels that have been shared online by or people, friends that have uploaded levels or whatever like that. So I think that one could be a good choice for that, because they're going to need it. They're going to need something. Everything's all sort of roses and all that kind of stuff right now, because of the numbers and things are going well. But this online thing is out there. It's an awkward transition that, like I said, would have been better handled if it was at the start of the hardware cycle, but they didn't do it, so now it's more awkward, and something needs to come in to smooth it out. And I think maybe, with Mario Kart's already passed them by, Splatoon 2's already passed them by, Smash is kind of the obvious next one, but I think maybe Mario Maker could be the one to help them do that.
And I think that goes back to the conversation we had about just following Sony's model then of establish a base by offering a premium product and then flip it over. Say, okay, now it's mandatory at a later date.
That was the plan originally, for sure. But I wonder if it's as easy to kind of execute on that, this deep, how deep it will be.
So I meant by like offering something else that's not taking things away. So like for them, it was Plus, where we're giving you access to games.
Yeah.
And
as long as they have Nintendo Home, I think I'm pretty good.
Oh, God. And then the next console cycle where you've already built up a user base, then you can just get like...
Yeah, then you could do that. That's the point. It's like, that's the point. I mean, I think if they were better prepared, they would have liked to make that transition for this cycle, but they just, evidently, they weren't ready.
I wonder if that transition would be easier, though, if you already say, like, but we've already got 17 million people signed up. Like, if it's just like, well, then fuck it. This is easy. Because your most dedicated fans who are going to buy your hardware probably are already members.
Yeah, and whether that game, that I'm talking about as a potential flagship would have to literally coincide, or maybe it could be a bit later. But so I would have thought, September, October, that's when I'd expect to see it.
Well, they're selling annual subscriptions anyway, so it could be a little bit later. It's not where they're like signing you up monthly. And their number was it $15?
20 bucks, I think, is what I saw, but it was a while ago. Like $20, €20.
So significantly cheaper than their counterparts.
Oh yeah, but again, is that still the plan? I mean, clearly this thing has been such a moving target that I wouldn't hold it to anything at this stage.
Now you have to pay it in semi-precious metals. John.
All right, my next 100% guaranteed ironclad prediction is Mario Odyssey will get a full-blown expansion this year. Well, maybe it'll be announced this year. Much like New Luigi U. Something along those lines. But it will get a full-blown expansion. We've seen that it can already accept DLC, so it will get a full-blown expansion.
Are we going to count you as correct if they turn out to make like a full-blown sequel like Super Mario Galaxy 2, which was meant to be a full-blown expansion, but just got out of hand?
These are questions that we will all have to search our hearts for the answers to.
No, we will not count you as correct. That'll be a sequel.
Ironclad, lock it down!
The Empire Strikes Back is not an expansion to A New Hope.
put the money on Vegas, just like Shinsuke Nakamura.
All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on quickly. Nintendo's rumored Zelda mobile game, which we haven't talked about in a while. It was reported by, oh shoot. It was a financial newspaper, I just can't remember which one. Way back in like May, it was reported. Is real. It is coming. And it will be before Mario Kart, which is also real. But here's the reason why Mario Kart had to be announced, because they've sold like 12 million Mario Kart 8 copies in the last few years.
Okay, I mean, to go back when they show, with those earnings reports, where they show the image of the catalog titles on 3DS,
right?
The Mario Kart 7 is right at the top.
Yeah, there were like 23 million sales of Mario Karts accounted for in that presentation.
Although, it's funny, he's talking about, 3DS games, if they were to have any left to it. And it is not so much something I would predict or anything, it's just an observation that it's kind of sad in a way if we really are that much in the wind down of 3DS now, that Zelda never had a wholly original single-player game on the system. I mean, you had the 3D ports of the N64 games. You had Link Between Worlds is not wholly original.
I guess.
I like the game a lot, unlike you, but it's not wholly original. Its game world is literally a recreation of the Super Nintendo one. And then Triforce Heroes is multiplayer driven.
Right.
Which is kind of remarkable, really. I mean, when you think of
you're right.
that can be true.
I mean, we had 3 of them on the Game Boy. Like, we had 2 on the DS.
No, it's on for something that sold more than 70 million units and has got a pretty lengthy life cycle going, and for it to not have a Zelda that's all its own is kind of sad. But there you go.
So, I'm going to give more specifics about the Zelda game, because I think this is important.
Of course.
Yeah. This is going to be 2D overhead perspective. It is going to be, obviously, all touch-controlled. Dungeon-centric game, so it's going to be like dungeons that you can buy in packs, or they will be released periodically. In those dungeons, there will be some degree of generation, so that it won't be the same every time. And Link will earn what is effectively loot for the purposes of customizing how your Link looks and maybe getting some powers into the game.
Loot boxes?
No, just more like Diablo style loot.
Okay.
So in terms of the pricing model, do you think they would dare go like something like a Super Mario Run again, or that they'll never bring that back?
I think you could sell packs cheaply,
so rather than a upfront for the whole lot cost, it's a piecemeal approach,
right? And I think what you get,
but not free to play.
No,
at the same time.
I think there will be free to play dungeons, but not everything.
Right. Okay.
2D, and its controls won't be the same as the DS ones, because that obviously relied very heavily on that being a resistive touchscreen and having that kind of accuracy. But I think it'll be very simplified. If you are controlling Link and you tap an enemy, just like in those games, he will go and he will hit them. Versus having to do like weird slashes and stuff on there. And I believe earnestly that we will be surprised this game controls pretty damn well. That's it.
I think that actually the mobile Zelda game is going to be a match 3 type game with rupees. Except every time that you make 3 like red rupees disappear, it tells you this is worth 5 rupees.
Does it play the chime at the same time?
Every single time you get a message reminding you.
I think it'd have to be Twilight Princess themed, from what I'm hearing.
Yes.
But the game keeps going while it's up there. So it just...
Yeah, and there would be some fun mechanics where you have to line up, like several chests to get the silver rupees. But if you already gotten one earlier, then you can't get rid of them on the screen.
Your wallet's full already. That's
Well,
the
yeah.
problem, isn't it? Yeah.
You can't clear any more gems because your wallet's full. God, now you're describing the Yoshi puzzle game, and not the one that just Yoshi, not Yoshi Cookie.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you've already got one egg half on the screen. I guess you're screwed.
My actual prediction,
Yeah.
the one that's going to come true, is that. So recently I saw that some IGN editor was complaining on Twitter that he sent a Switch for repair and got it back, and his saves are gone. And so there's kind of a new round of people clamoring for cloud saves for the Switch. I predict that we're not getting that in 2018. And I predict that instead Nintendo's going to go its own way. And instead of cloud saves, their solution to transfer save files from one Switch to the next, maybe even allow you to bring your save file to a friend's Switch, is that they're going to let you download an app that can turn your saves into alphanumeric codes. And so you can just write those down on a sheet of paper and then input them on another Switch to reproduce.
I thought you were going to go Bangai-O Spirits with us, and you just put the microphone.
I was thinking the same thing, James. I was thinking they'll have Switch speak.
I do like the idea of like. I do like the idea of like, hey,
John.
I do like the idea of like somebody like has a friend with a Switch who like hasn't got a whole bunch of games installed with it. And he's like, hey, can I just like secrete my save data on your system just in case I need to get it back one day? You know, so it's like a very terrestrial version of remote saving.
The Bangai-O thing is a good idea, but I was going to say that they could have made it. They could have made it like a QR code, but the codes are actually too long. There's too much info for QR codes. So you basically like one level of Super Mario Maker is, like 5 pages.
It's like with those old code books for microcomputers.
Yeah,
right.
They would send you a program every month, and you'd have to type it yourself. On
don't mistake the zeros for O's.
Yeah, you'd have to fire up your Amstrad CPC and type up this entire program.
Yep.
Oh. So I like the Bangai-O Spirits, though, because that would be like, now you're going to hear 49 minutes of horrible screeching sounds from one Switch to the other.
Yep.
And so you don't lose data. They'll have to confirm it back and forth, so you get to hear it in echo.
Oh, nice.
Oh. What a terrible, terrible world you live in, Guillaume. You invent the worst timelines.
Well, the Nintendo loves codes when it comes to online. They just, there's nothing they love more than numbers and letters.
Nobody ever died from writing down codes, Guillaume.
Probably did.
Heard that.
Lethal carpal tunnel syndrome.
Heard that from a wise old man one day.
No, you didn't. All right, Craig.
Okay, so meanwhile in my timeline, moving into like the Thanksgiving, all that kind of season, they're gonna need some big hitters. I still think finally this is the time that Animal Crossing gets its belated. It didn't. I've said it a million times. It didn't get a Wii U go round, so it kind of feels belated, really. New Leaf is pretty damn old at this point, even though they've like reinvigorated it with Welcome Amiibo or whatever, but it's past time for another full-on installment in the Animal Crossing series. Switch seems like a absolutely ideal platform for it. I have to look at how well Stardew Valley's been doing to see that. So I think that will satisfy a certain element of the big kind of holiday game for them, even though it's not so much such a sort of character-driven franchise. I'm sure it will do well for them. Then there's the Pokemon question. So I'm sure people who were familiar with the the earnings report stuff, we've noticed a slightly curious designation for the Pokemon Switch game, which was not the usual. Like, okay, it's it's this particular month, or it's this quarter in a year, or it's TBA like Bayonetta 3 and Metroid Prime 4, which probably means beyond this calendar year. But no, it was 2018 or later. That is literally how they in official documentation, 2018 or later. What that says to me, and I hesitate to try and infer too much from this sort of thing, because I mean, really, Nintendo doesn't want to give away too much with these things when they're not sure themselves. And I think that's really what we're looking at here. But what it says to me is, good God, they'd love to get it out in 2018, but they are not sure they can. And therefore, I do think, I would guess that it will come out before the fiscal year ends. So that if it misses the end of 2018, look for it in before March, of 2019 finishes. Because I think they're very eager to get that big hit, on Switch that kind of goes to a slightly different place than the kind of Marios and Zeldas, the way that Pokemon does. It is interesting though, because the price of Switch, if this is an exclusive mainline Pokemon game on Switch, that's on a device that is far more expensive than has ever been the case before. I mean, you think about by the time Pokemon arrived on 3DS, the price had dipped way, but we'd gone through the whole price cut phase and the new models and all that kind of stuff, and it stabilised out. And then go back DS, GBA, GBC. These are all affordable platforms for what people normally look at. Our Pokemon, at least in part, needs to be able to reach small children, and Switch is a bit pricey for that. So it's kind of interesting how well, whether it will retain its full power in terms of marketing, on a device as expensive as Switch. But for them, they're looking at it thinking, this is something that can, really have however fast it's already been selling, it could give it another huge shot in the arm, reach more people than ever, and especially, still kind of, you look at how much the Pokemon Go and the anniversary stuff and Sun and Moon invigorated 3DS sales. I mean, even to the point that this past year, 3DS sales in America are actually above where they were in 2015, which is remarkable when you think that the relative lack of support because they were so busy launching Switch and all that. But it just shows you the power of this brand. But the one sort of caveat being that 3DS and especially like 2DS and stuff is cheap at this point. So it'll be an interesting test, but I'm going to, for once, go optimistic and say Pokemon for Switch will arrive in this calendar year. It might be pushing it, but I do think it will make it, and then presumably the final sort of major game in the year, kind of in the Xenoblade 2 slot, will be Fire Emblem.
Okay.
To put number on that, welcome Amiibo or Amiibo total. So, or goddamn it, Animal Crossing total is 11.5 on, which is nuts.
Enormous, absolutely enormous. So that is a big deal. I kind of glossed over that. It's not really a big prediction because I mean it's got to be coming soon, But I do think that's a major player for there, and they don't. So from that point of view, if Pokemon did fall through to the beginning of 2019, maybe you could argue it wouldn't be the end of the world. They could live with it. But right. I do believe they really want to hit it now sooner rather than later, I should say.
I'm glad they clarified, though, they're not going to be releasing it in the past.
Or later, or earlier.
I would love to see that, where they just, I mean, it's basically the equivalent of Devilish Brain Training being on the European release schedule for like 39 years.
It's true, isn't it? It's true.
I wish that had never come out. Not because I'm...
Some people probably lost heart with that, but they delivered eventually.
It would have been funnier to me if 3 years down the road it was still on the list.
Yeah, it was kind of like Nintendo's Duke Nukem Forever. Like it was actually funnier.
No, it wasn't
because
it was out everywhere else. It was just
true.
Europe.
Well, that's about as Duke Nukem Forever as Nintendo gets.
Okay.
Well, fire around for the fourth prediction if we've got them, or
yeah, who has one? I have one.
I got another one.
Okay, we'll just keep going then. John, what do you got?
James, do you like money?
John, I love money.
If you like money, you go to Vegas, find the nearest bookmaker, and you put money on this.
Okay.
Nintendogs 2 will be released for Switch, and it will have a Labo pack packed into it that will let you
third Nintendogs
create that. I don't know, whatever. Nintendogs 2.
They don't. It was plus cats though, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was plus cats.
Yeah, that's kind of a spin-off.
It was interstitial.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
that one was not.
It was a midquel, is what you're telling me?
I'm going to say paralog.
Oh, okay.
This is because the timeline splits, and it's like, what if Nintendogs Worlds had cats in it?
Or what if the cats were eliminated?
Well, the era of cat.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah,
Nintendogs minus cats is what they'll call the next one, is what you're telling me?
so Nintendogs or earlier. Okay, so it's going to be. So it's going to have a pack-in Labo pack that will let you create little dogs and have them walk around, and you'll be able to control it from your Switch.
There you go.
How about just something that lets you strap your Wii remotes to an actual dog and control it remotely?
Guillaume, I'm going to go ahead and let you know, as a longtime dog owner, strapping things to dogs generally doesn't go very well.
Probably, yeah. Not a good
I like your idea, though. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
I'm kind of mad about it, to be honest, because I can see it, and that upsets me. I have to go to Vegas now and bet on a cardboard dog.
I'm telling you.
John, if I'm going to bet dogs, I'm going to bet the Greyhounds, not your cardboard Joy-Con powered dog.
Cardboard Joy-Con
years after chasing AR, augmented reality, strapping remotes to cardboard is a big thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's amazing.
All right. My fourth prediction. Capcom's already started the apology tour when they had the Mega Man stream. Where they're like, man, this really should have been on Switch before we fucked up. And they really leaned into it. The place where this game belonged all along. And then they had the audacity to tell us they're going to sell us every Mega Man X game. Apparently not as part of a collection because they're fucking lunatics.
There's going to be a lot of unplayed Mega Man X games, sounds to me.
Yeah.
Man,
they're doing us a favor.
I can't wait to not play Mega Man X8. But the apology tour rolls into the next station with the announcement of Ace Attorney for Switch. Coming out this year, and for once, it'll be an Ace Attorney game I'm excited to play that won't be Japan only. Because this one will be written by the main series writer and not by the B team that's been doing the Ace Attorney games since he started making games.
Takumi coming back from
writing his Victorian-era fan fiction.
Yeah, great Ace Attorney exile for us Westerners, essentially.
He's done writing his Sherlock Holmes fan fiction. Is coming home to the series, and it's going to be a frustrating experience for everybody because, goddamn it, that man does not care about anything but making his audience mad.
I'm somewhat in the middle of Leighton versus Wright at the minute. I've been very gradually playing it. I might be finished by the end of the year.
Then you haven't even gotten to the point where the game just says no. I don't care if you understand what's happening.
Yeah, I'm definitely out.
So Ace Attorney, the compilations and the 7th game were announced for Switch, right? Like I'm seeing news on French blogs. I don't know.
They've talked
about bringing the franchise to Switch, certainly.
Right. I'm talking about like this is the game. Here it is. You can play it. It is coming.
Okay.
They've talked about wanting to bring the franchise to Switch and stuff like that.
In terms of it being specifically, Takumi coming back as well and all that.
Okay. So that's the prediction.
Anything.
Yeah, like this is the game. It is here. and you may not play it.
And it's global.
Cool.
Be the other part of it.
Yeah. That's yeah. I was gonna say that's part of a larger Capcom like we gotta get shit on the Switch ploy, but that's the big one.
Yeah,
for me, at
we'll
least.
see. I'm sure we'll see. Like, they've obviously all the Resident Evils have got to come. Because they're on like everything as it is. So I know they got the Revelations, but they got to get.
I would love
especially 4, but like we're gonna get 5 and 6 and 1 to 3 as well.
I would love for them to release 1 to 3 and 5 and 6 and just not do 4.
I want 1, but I want Resident Evil Deadly Silence, that version to come to Switch.
Yeah.
That would be great.
I'm disappointed it didn't come to Wii U. I mean,
you just use the motion controls to wave the knife around and stuff. It's perfect.
Oh, you had a touchscreen. It was perfect for it.
Perfect is a word you could use there. Sure.
The turbo graphics thing is still happening with Virtual Console, so we can't rule it out yet. Maybe.
Not only is it still happening, they're bringing over RPGs that no one can read. It's magnificent.
So my fourth and last prediction this year, Nintendo has said sometimes they can be you got to be careful what they're actually saying, and Nintendo has said that they weren't looking to venture into VR. What they didn't say is that they didn't say no to VB. So what I predict is a Labo kit,
as in dog.
VB as in Virtual Boy.
Oh,
and
no,
now
that's
that
worse
they're
than
big
VB.
fans of cardboard.
When you say VB, I think Visual Basic. I'm just like, oh my god, where is he going with this?
What I'm saying is that with their newfound love of cardboard, I think we're going to get a kit where you can just insert a Switch screen to your face, like like the mobile VR kits. And except this time, it's not going to be VR. It's going to be a perfectly emulated Virtual Boy so that you can play Waterworld or whatever it is.
So you can play and then there's this long pause of shit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the controllers are perfect for Virtual Boy,
the double D-pad. Everyone loves double D-pad.
Yeah, it just makes sense.
What if you could make a controller so confounding that only the Intellivision's designers would go, "That's a good controller"?
I think you're thinking of the Jaguar pad.
Greg, what you got?
Well, a few things in terms of the end of, I've kind of gone up to the end of the year, but just kind of going back, mopping up a few things. I honestly don't even know what to think about. So, the question of the, original Retro Studios project, I don't know how many years in a row we could have been talking about this if we'd done predictions every year. Because going back to DK Tropical Freeze was in early 2014. So, yeah, probably... every year since then, certainly we could have been talking about it, but I'm not sure how much the fact that there is that port really affects anything. Even though I'm sure they have some involvement in it. I imagine that hasn't stopped them from doing other things, but I don't know. I'm still not all together. Especially as I said, with the shortening time horizon, I think that we're looking at now. This E3, I'm sure, will be very focused on the next 6 to 9 months worth of stuff. And it won't go much beyond that. Maybe a nod to Metroid Prime 4 because they've already kind of set a precedent there. Maybe a nod towards Bayonetta 3, but I wouldn't count on that. But with the Retro Studios, I'm not that. If I had to predict, which apparently I do, given the nature of the segment, I'm going to say that we won't see it at E3. And then I guess if I was going to pick something to get announced, kind of not necessarily sure where it would slot in, but just kind of a franchise coming back perhaps somewhat unexpectedly, I would actually go with, and I'm sure I've used this before, but I still feel the same way, so why not reheat it? Luigi's Mansion. That is a game on 3DS, Dark Moon, that is one of their sort of catalogue titles for that platform. It did really rather well. And I think they will look to use it again. I guess wouldn't be out of the question that you could even, if they are going to be doing any kind of original games on 3DS still, that wouldn't be a bad candidate, a sort of sequel to that or something, in terms of, it was with outside developers before, so presumably would be either with the same people again, or perhaps even different people, but or it could be a Switch. Would certainly be my preference, a Switch Luigi's Mansion, to get back to that kind of feeling that you had with the original, where it's kind of like just doing really fun things with sort of what are for the day, relatively high fidelity graphics and all that kind of stuff. The 3D effect was nice on Dark Moon, but it kind of felt like, to some extent, like they were, and obviously a lot of this is just rose tinted stuff, but it didn't feel like the characters and stuff were really as expressive even as the GameCube ones. Some of that is because the ghosts were more generic as well.
Yeah, that was my biggest complaint, was the lack of the picture ghost.
Yeah, so that's just like a visual design thing or whatever. So, but yeah, I think Luigi's Mansion seems sort of ripe for a comeback, even though, would I want F-Zero? Of course I would, but I'm not going to predict that as much as I might hope for it.
So I guess we're crossing off Brisket Challenge as our prediction for Retro.
I'm not expected to see Brisket Challenge at this E3, no. I mean, I guess we've all got to take a position on that.
I expect to see Brisket Challenge probably E3 2021. I think that one needs some more time in the smoker.
Oh, God.
You fuckers don't get to moan. All right, I've put up with something.
I want moaning. I'm loving it. This is beautiful.
And on that,
Brisket for mobile. I mean, that's probably what it should be. I mean, you can take it anywhere you want, all the time. All right, so if you missed our reminder, that's it for predictions, thank God. If you missed our reminder, we have a double feature retroactive for the WiiWare going away party. So it is You, Me, and the Cubes and Bonsai Barber. There's two different games. We're going to talk about them back to back on the same episode. And that episode was supposed to be next week. I say was because we moved it to the subsequent episode, which would be 5/59. 2 weeks. So go ahead and start playing. There's a talkback thread on the Nintendo World Report. You can post your comments there. And they may find their way on the show. These will be pretty brisk conversations because these are fairly breezy games. If you have any questions, comments, or your own horrible predictions, you can send them to our email address, which is rfn@nintendoworldreport.com, or post them in those fine message boards, or you can even send them to our Twitter account, which is @RFN Podcast, which has lately just been me arguing with myself about how to make the articles post correctly on our feeds. Hey, speaking of which, we are now officially the owner of our Stitcher feed, so whoever was controlling that for a while, we're sorry. We took it from you, but we had to do that till we get to fix it because it's the only way we could help support. So, Greg,
a much more succinct way of saying that was "You're done."
It's true.
I was really expecting.
I did have a prediction specifically about the return of the Voice of a Nation. But it's going to be a DLC. You have to pay extra for it.
Yeah.
It's going to be the Don't Forget Me pack.
Jeez Louise. Oh dear.
And on that, Greg, do we have any music this week?
Well, we do have music, but something that pertains both to music and an annual tradition I actually like. Radio Trivia Podcast Edition.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, I was on the most recent episode of that podcast for reasons I won't go into here, but there's this weird annual tradition thing of like I come on at least once a year and it's become the first episode of the new year. But it's me with TYP. Mostly my choices, so you get to hear plenty of me prattling about games while TYP edits in music as best he can underneath it to make it sound bearable. And one game which I never get right in the middle, which is a listener request. But radio trivia, video game music from a bunch of different eras. guessing games, chatting about old games, complaining about being old in general. That's what it is. I love it. I think if you give it a go, you might love it too. And then as for this week's closing music, I wanted to use something from Celeste because it has a lovely soundtrack. It's very piano driven in general. But this particular song is actually one of the sort of more the synthesized tracks that sort of fit with the retro aesthetic of the game, the pixel art aesthetic of the game, called Star Jump. And this kind of has got like it really does a really good job. Like I said, there's a lot of melancholy components to it, but it can sort of ratchet up the tension and sort of the excitement level when it needs to as well, to kind of help embellish the action. So if you're interested in it, it's composed by Lena Rain and you can buy it at radicaldreamland.bandcamp.com. But for this time we've got Star Jump, and I hope you enjoy it.
Cool. Well, on that, it's time for us to go and not have to predict anything for a full year. Yay! Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
Bye-bye.